Alien girl shocked when the human soldier asks her out. The stars twinkled dimly in the void of space as the massive cruiser Arcadia hummed softly. Lieutenant John Carter stood at his post on the bridge, his gaze focused on the shifting colors of the nebulae outside. The war between the Terran Federation and the Sci-Fi Dominion had left its mark on the galaxy, with the uneasy silence often broken by skirmishes. But here, aboard the Arcadia, things were quiet, for now. John's thoughts were interrupted by the sudden beep of the communication console. The voice, calm yet urgent, broke through the quiet. "Lieutenant Carter, you're needed in the docking bay immediately. We've got an unexpected visitor." John frowned. Unexpected visitors weren't common in the middle of a conflict zone, especially not on a warship. He hurried down to the docking bay, heart pounding with curiosity and a hint of anxiety. Upon arrival, the sight that greeted him was enough to make him stop in his tracks. The lone Scifi stood on the bay floor, guarded by two human soldiers. Tall and graceful, with sleek gray skin and eyes that glowed faintly, the Scifi woman had a regal bearing, her sharp features set in an expression of tension. Her long, segmented tail flicked behind her as her gaze swept over the human crew. "Lieutenant Carter," one of the guards called, motioning him over. John approached cautiously, his eyes never leaving the Scifi. "What's going on?" "She's asking to speak to you," the guard replied, nodding toward the alien. "Says it's urgent." John blinked, puzzled. "Me? I don't even know her." The Scifi woman stepped forward, her voice soft but firm. "You are Lieutenant John Carter." "I'm Zelra, of the Scifi High Command. I came here under orders to meet with you specifically." John's surprise deepened. How did she know his name? And why would an officer from the enemy fleet request to meet with him? He studied her for a moment before responding, choosing his words carefully. "All right, Zelra, you've got my attention. What's this all about?" Zelra's expression hardened slightly as she glanced around the bay. "Not here. This discussion needs to be private. The future of both our species may depend on it." John exchanged a quick glance with the guards before nodding. "Fine. We'll talk in the briefing room." As they made their way to the briefing room, John's mind raced. It was highly unusual for a Scifi to willingly come aboard a human warship, let alone request a meeting with a specific officer. There had to be something much bigger at play. Once inside the briefing room, John activated the privacy field, locking out any potential eavesdroppers. Zelra stood by the window, gazing out at the stars, her tail swaying slightly. "So," John began, leaning against the table, "you've come all this way to talk to me. What's the catch?" Zelra turned to face him, her glowing eyes reflecting the starlight. "There's no catch, Lieutenant. I've come to offer a proposal. One that could change the course of the war." John's brow furrowed. "Go on." Zelra took a breath before continuing. "The Scifi Dominion is not as unified as you think. There are factions within our command that seek an end to this conflict, just as I believe some among your people do. This war is bleeding both our species dry. I have reason to believe that if we work together, we can negotiate peace on equal terms." John couldn't help but feel a wave of skepticism. "You really expect me to believe that after everything your people have done? This war didn't start because of misunderstandings. You invaded our colonies." Zelra's gaze flickered with something like regret. "I'm not here to justify my people's actions. I'm here to stop the bloodshed. Whether you believe me or not is your choice, but I wouldn't be here if I didn't think there was a chance." For a moment, silence filled the room, heavy with unspoken tension. John's thoughts churned as he weighed the risks and possibilities. Zelra's proposition was dangerous, potentially a trap, but her eyes held a sincerity he hadn't expected. Finally, he spoke, his voice measured. "All right, let's say I believe you. What exactly are you proposing?" Zelra stepped closer, her posture tense but resolute. "A joint operation. A mission to infiltrate a rogue faction within the Scifi Dominion. one that seeks to escalate this war beyond our control. If we can neutralize them, we might have a chance to broker peace. John narrowed his eyes. And why me? Why not go through the usual diplomatic channels? Zelra's expression softened slightly, a hint of a smile playing at the corners of her lips. Because, Lieutenant Carter, I've read your file. You're not just a soldier, you're someone who thinks beyond orders, someone who questions the status quo. I need someone who can see the bigger picture. John crossed his arms, his mind still racing. This was a monumental risk, but if there was even a sliver of truth to her words, it could change everything. The thought of ending the war was a powerful motivator. All right, Zelra, he said slowly. I'm in, but if this turns out to be a trap. Zelra met his gaze with unwavering resolve. It won't be. You have my word. With that, the seeds of an unlikely alliance were sown. A human soldier and an alien commander, bound by the hope of ending a war that had ravaged both their worlds. Neither of them could know the dangers that lay ahead. But one thing was certain, their journey had only just begun. The Arcadia cruised silently through the blackness of space, its engines humming in the background. Lieutenant John Carter sat in the briefing room, staring at a holographic map of the galaxy. The Athan Dominion's territory loomed in shades of red, with Terran Federation space marked in blue. The areas of conflict, where human and Scifi forces clashed, were scattered across the galaxy like ugly scars. Beside him stood Zelra, the Scifi commander who had sought him out. She was a striking presence, her tall figure casting a shadow over the room, and her glowing eyes fixed on the map. There was a tension between them. Neither fully trusted the other yet, but both understood that their mission required cooperation. John broke the silence. This rogue faction of yours, how big is it? Zelra's tail flicked with agitation. Bigger than we'd like. They're led by a warlord named Srilac, a former ex-Scifi general who believes in complete domination of the galaxy. He rejects any possibility of peace and is willing to destroy both our civilizations to prove it. John frowned. And you're saying this faction has enough power to derail any peace efforts? Zelra nodded. More than enough. Srilac commands a fleet of ships loyal to him, and he's amassed resources through raiding both Scifi and human supply lines. He's unpredictable, ruthless, and dangerous. John leaned back in his chair, rubbing his chin. Sounds like we're dealing with a fanatic. What's your plan for stopping him? Zelra's glowing eyes turned toward him, her expression deadly serious. We infiltrate his base of operations. It's a hidden installation on the edge of Dominion space. If we can disrupt his chain of command and sabotage his fleet, we might be able to cripple his movement before he strikes. John raised an eyebrow. We? As in you and me? Zelra's lips curved into a wry smile. You're quick, Lieutenant. Yes, this mission will require both of us. My people won't expect a human working with me, and your Federation won't suspect a Scifi at your side. That's the advantage we have. John stood, pacing around the room. It's still a huge risk. If we're caught, we'll both be executed as traitors. Zelra's gaze didn't waver. I know the risks, Carter, but if we don't act, Srilac will launch an all-out attack on Federation space within weeks. Millions will die. The weight of her words hung heavy in the air. John knew she wasn't exaggerating. The Scifi Dominion was more technologically advanced than humanity, and if this rogue warlord launched a full-scale invasion, the Terran Federation might not be able to hold out for long. He stopped pacing and faced her. All right, we'll do it your way. But we're going to need more than just the two of us. Zelra nodded. I've already thought of that. I have contacts within the Dominion who are sympathetic to our cause. They can provide us with intel and equipment. As for your part, John thought for a moment. I'll need to pull in a small team, people I trust implicitly. They'll need to be briefed carefully, though. I don't want word of this mission leaking. Zelra agreed. No one can know about this, not until it's over. John's mind raced as he considered who he could bring into the fold. He needed people who could handle a mission like this. Special forces operatives who wouldn't question orders but also wouldn't hesitate to think on their feet. He had a few names in mind, but this was going to be tricky. "Give me a few hours," John said, moving toward the door. "I'll pull together a team. Meet me in the shuttle bay when you're ready." Zalra inclined her head slightly. "I'll be there." Hours later, John stood in the shuttle bay with 3 of his most trusted comrades. They were all hardened veterans of the Federation's Special Operations Unit, and each one had proven themselves in countless battles against the Scifi. Now they stood ready for something far more dangerous. Sergeant Marcus, Iron Blackwell, the giant of a man with muscles to match his name, was the first to speak. "So, Carter, what's the op? You're being pretty vague." John glanced over at the shadows where Zalra was concealed, waiting for the right moment to reveal herself. He took a deep breath. "This is going to be unlike any mission we've ever done. It's classified, off the books, and high stakes." Corporal Alex Reyes, a tech expert with a mischievous grin, raised an eyebrow. "You're making it sound fun already." The last member of the group, Specialist Sarah Duval, an expert sniper with a steely demeanor, crossed her arms. "Just give us the details, Carter. We're here because we trust you." John nodded. "All right. Here's the deal." He motioned to Zilra, who stepped out of the shadows, her presence instantly commanding attention. All 3 soldiers tensed at the sight of the Scifi commander, their hands instinctively moving toward their weapons. John held up a hand to stop them. "Stand down," he ordered. "She's with us." Marcus's eyes widened. "You've got to be kidding me." "Scifi, are you out of your mind?" John met his gaze firmly. "I'm dead serious. This war isn't what we think it is. There's a rogue faction within the Dominion, and if we don't stop them, we're all going to pay the price. Zalra here has information we need, and she's risking her life to help us." Alex glanced between John and Zalra, clearly unsure. "And we're supposed to trust her, just like that?" John's voice was steady. "You trust me, don't you?" There was a long pause before Sarah finally spoke, her eyes narrowing at Zalra. "What's the mission?" Zalra stepped forward, her posture calm but commanding. "We're going after Sherlock, the leader of a rogue Scifi faction. He plans to escalate the war and destroy both our civilizations. Our mission is to infiltrate his base and neutralize him before he can launch his attack." The group exchanged glances. It was clear that they were still wary, but they trusted John. And if he was vouching for Zilra, that was enough for now. Marcus grunted. "This is insane, Carter. But if you say it's the right call, I'm in." Alex shrugged, a grin creeping onto his face. "Sounds like fun. Let's go crash a rogue warlord's party." Sarah simply nodded, her expression unreadable. "I'll cover you." John felt a wave of relief wash over him. He knew this mission was a gamble, but now he had his team, and a slim chance of success. Zalra inclined her head. "Thank you. All of you. We don't have much time. Sherlock's forces are already mobilizing. We'll need to move quickly." John activated the controls for the shuttle, and as the engines roared to life, he glanced at Zalra. "Let's hope you're right about this." Zilra's gaze was steady. "Let's hope you're as good as your reputation says you are, Lieutenant." With that, the team boarded the shuttle, setting off on a mission that would test the limits of trust, cooperation, and the very survival of both their species. The shuttle plunged into the inky blackness of space, its engines purring quietly as it coasted toward the edge of Dominion territory. Inside, John Carter and his team sat strapped into their seats, the weight of the mission pressing down on them. The atmosphere was tense. Everyone knew what was at stake. Zilra, the Scifi commander, stood at the helm, her eyes scanning the holographic star map. "We're entering the outskirts of Sherlock's territory. His forces patrol this area, so we need to keep a low profile." John nodded, feeling the hum of the ship's engines beneath his feet. He exchanged a glance with Marcus Iron Blackwell, who was checking the massive plasma rifle strapped across his chest. Alex Reyes, the team's tech expert, was already tinkering with his equipment, while Sarah Duval sat calmly, her sniper rifle resting in her lap. "What's the plan once we reach Sarlacc's base?" Sarah asked, her eyes sharp and focused. Zelra turned to face them, her expression unreadable. Sarlacc's base is hidden inside an asteroid field, shielded from most scans. We'll have to navigate through it manually. Once inside, we need to disable his communication systems to prevent him from calling reinforcements. After that, we'll take out his command structure, starting with Sarlacc himself. John folded his arms. Sounds straightforward, but something tells me it won't be that easy. Zelra's tail flicked. It won't. Sarlacc's forces are elite, loyal to him alone. The asteroid field is heavily fortified with automated defenses and patrol ships. Stealth is our only advantage. Marcus grunted. So we sneak in, blow up their toys, and take out the big bad. Simple enough. Alex chuckled, though the tension in his voice was evident. Yeah, except if we mess up, we're dead. John knew they couldn't afford any mistakes. Sarlacc was a wild card, a warlord with the power to ignite a galaxy-wide conflict that would make the current war seem like a skirmish. Every moment they spent on this mission was a gamble. Zelra pointed to the star map. We'll approach from this angle, an unguarded section of the asteroid belt. The patrols are sparse here, but we'll still need to move carefully. The shuttle's controls beeped, signaling their proximity to the asteroid field. Outside the viewport, massive chunks of rock drifted through space, illuminated only by distant stars. The sight was both awe-inspiring and ominous. "All right, people," John said, strapping himself into the pilot's seat. "We're going in." The shuttle's engines powered down to a whisper as John expertly guided the craft between the asteroids, weaving through the labyrinthine field. One wrong move, and they could crash. Or worse, trigger one of the automated defense turrets scattered throughout the area. "Keep an eye out for movement," John warned. "These rocks aren't the only thing out here." Zelra's glowing eyes narrowed as she scanned the area. There, 3 Scifi patrol ships on the far side of the field. We're out of their sensor range, but we'll need to stay that way. Alex tapped at his console. "I'm feeding a false signal to their scanners. If they pick us up, they'll think we're just another asteroid." John's hands were steady on the controls as he maneuvered the shuttle through the tight spaces. Minutes felt like hours as they inched closer to Sarlacc's hidden base. Finally, the dark silhouette of a massive asteroid loomed ahead. "There it is," Zelra said, pointing to a barely visible metallic structure embedded in the asteroid's surface. Sarlacc's base. The team stared at the imposing installation. It was a fortress, heavily reinforced with thick plating and bristling with turrets. Dozens of fighter ships were docked in its hangars, ready to launch at a moment's notice. "Looks cozy," Marcus muttered. "How are we supposed to get in there without getting blasted to pieces?" Zelra's tail flicked. "We'll enter through a maintenance shaft on the far side. It's not monitored as closely, but it'll be a tight fit." John angled the shuttle toward the shaft, his pulse quickening. The closer they got, the more vulnerable they became. The automated defenses could tear them apart in seconds if they were detected. "Almost there," John whispered, guiding the shuttle toward the narrow entrance. The craft slid into the shaft with only inches to spare on either side. The metal walls loomed close, creating a claustrophobic tunnel as they descended deeper into the asteroid. "Everyone ready?" John asked as the shuttle came to a stop inside the maintenance bay. Marcus hefted his rifle. "Born ready." Alex grinned as he holstered his gadgets. "Let's do this." Sarah simply nodded, her sniper rifle slung over her shoulder. Zelra was the last to stand, her gaze steely. "Stay close. Sarlacc's base is a maze, and it's full of traps. One wrong move, and we're finished." John led the way as the team disembarked from the shuttle, moving swiftly and silently through the dimly lit corridors of the base. The walls were cold and metallic, a stark reminder of the enemy territory they were in. Every step echoed in the silence, a constant reminder that they were deep in enemy territory. Zalora moved ahead, her knowledge of the base proving invaluable. The control room is on the lower level. We'll disable the communications there. The team pressed forward, passing through narrow corridors and winding staircases. They encountered no resistance, yet, but John could feel the tension building. Something was off. "Hold up," Sarah whispered, her sharp eyes scanning the shadows. "We're being watched." John halted the team, glancing around. "You sure?" Before Sarah could respond, the walls around them shifted. Panels slid open, revealing hidden alcoves filled with Xivan soldiers. They were outnumbered, and their ambush was swift. "Incoming!" Marcus roared, raising his rifle as plasma bolts erupted around them. The team dove for cover, returning fire as the Xivan forces closed in. Zalora fought alongside them, her movements swift and deadly as she slashed through enemies with her energy blade. John felt the adrenaline surge as he fired his weapon, every shot precise and controlled. "Reyes!" John shouted over the chaos. "We need that door open." Alex was already at the control panel, frantically working to bypass the security lock. "I'm on it. Just keep them off me." Marcus unleashed a barrage of fire, taking down several Xivan soldiers in one burst. "Hurry it up, Reyes. We're getting pinned down." Sarah's sniper rifle cracked as she picked off targets with deadly accuracy. "I've got you covered, Reyes. Just get that door open." Alex's fingers flew over the console, beads of sweat forming on his forehead. Almost there. Just a few more seconds. Suddenly, the door slid open, revealing the control room beyond. John shouted, "Move! Go! Go! Go!" The team rushed inside, sealing the door behind them as plasma fire ricocheted off the walls. Inside the control room, they found a massive console, glowing with data feeds from every part of Cyrilac's base. "Zalora, get to work on the communications," John ordered. "We'll cover you." Zalora sprinted to the console, her fingers dancing across the controls. "I'm disabling the comms now, but Cyrilac will know we're here. We need to move fast." John scanned the room, his mind racing. This was only the beginning. Cyrilac would throw everything he had at them, and they were deep inside enemy territory, with no way out except forward. "Once the comms are down, we head for Cyrilac," John said, determination in his voice. "We take him down, and we end this." Zalora nodded, her eyes blazing. "Agreed. But Cyrilac won't go down easily. He's been waiting for this moment." John clenched his fists. "So have we." Zalora's fingers flew across the control console, disabling Cyrilac's communications while the team covered her. As she worked, alarms blared throughout the base, signaling that their intrusion had not gone unnoticed. "We're running out of time," Marcus shouted as he fired his plasma rifle at the door, now buckling under the pressure of approaching enemies. John paced behind him, his mind racing. They had successfully infiltrated the heart of Cyrilac's base, but now they had to face the warlord himself, a foe known for his brutal tactics and ruthless leadership. It was a battle that would test everything they had, and even with the communications disabled, Cyrilac still had the upper hand. "Zalora, how much longer?" John asked, turning to the Xivan commander. "Another minute. I'm trying to wipe all the outgoing signals, but Cyrilac's system is heavily encrypted." The door buckled again, and the sound of energy weapons firing echoed through the narrow hallways. Sarah adjusted her position, her sniper rifle aimed at the breach, ready to defend against the inevitable onslaught. Suddenly, the door exploded inward, and Xivan elite troops stormed the control room. Plasma bolts filled the air as John's team retaliated. Marcus threw himself into the fray, his rifle spitting fire. Sarah took down 2 soldiers with precision shots, and Alex ducked behind cover, tossing a pulse grenade that exploded with a flash of white light, stunning their attackers. "Zalora, now." John yelled as he fought alongside Marcus, his weapon blazing. "I've got it," Zelra shouted. With a final tap of her clawed fingers, she disabled the last of the communications. "Sarlacc can't call for reinforcements." John nodded, but there was no time for relief. "Good. Now we move. We take down Sarlacc before he can mount a counterattack." The team bolted from the control room, moving swiftly through the corridors of the base. They knew Sarlacc would be in his throne room, likely surrounded by his most loyal warriors. The closer they got, the more resistance they encountered. The elite forces were relentless, engaging the team in brutal close-quarter combat as they made their way deeper into the heart of the base. Marcus's sheer strength and Sarah's pinpoint accuracy kept the enemy at bay, but the fights were taking their toll. John could feel the weariness creeping into his bones, but he pushed it aside, knowing they couldn't stop. Not now. Finally, they reached a set of massive doors, intricately carved with alien symbols. Beyond them lay the throne room of Sarlacc. Zelra paused, her breathing heavy. "This is it. Sarlacc's in there." John exchanged glances with his team. "Ready?" Marcus tightened his grip on his rifle. "Always." Alex wiped sweat from his brow. "Let's end this." Sarah, ever calm, gave a single nod. With a deep breath, John placed his hand on the door's control panel, and the massive doors slid open, revealing the throne room of the Xivan warlord. Sarlacc sat upon a towering, jagged throne made of dark metal, his red eyes glowing like embers. His enormous, armored form dwarfed the warriors that flanked him, his most loyal and fearsome bodyguards. The warlord's voice boomed through the chamber, filled with disdain. "You dare enter my domain?" Sarlacc sneered, his voice dripping with malice. "Foolish humans. You think you can defeat me? I have crushed civilizations beneath my heel." John stepped forward, undeterred by the imposing figure before him. "You've enslaved, tortured, and killed your way to power, Sarlacc. That ends today." Sarlacc's laugh was deep and menacing. "Brave words, human, but bravery alone will not save you." With a wave of his hand, the warlord commanded his bodyguards to attack. The Xivan warriors surged forward with a terrifying battle cry, their energy blades crackling with power. John's team sprang into action, engaging in a fierce, chaotic battle. Marcus tore through the enemy ranks with his heavy weapon, his raw strength cutting down foes left and right. Alex weaved through the fight, using his tech to disable the warriors' shields and confuse their targeting systems. Sarah, ever the sharpshooter, fired from a distance, picking off key targets with lethal efficiency. Zelra fought like a demon, her dual energy blades flashing as she sliced through Sarlacc's elite guard with a precision only a Xivan commander could master. Her strikes were quick, lethal, and merciless. As the battle raged, John pushed through the chaos, his focus solely on Sarlacc. The warlord watched him approach, his expression one of grim amusement. Finally, as the last of the bodyguards fell, it was just the two of them. "You are no match for me, human," Sarlacc growled, rising from his throne. He drew a massive, crackling energy weapon, its blade glowing with deadly intensity. "I will crush you with my own hands." John steadied himself, gripping his plasma rifle tightly. "We'll see about that." The fight was brutal. Sarlacc was fast, far faster than his size suggested. His attacks came in vicious, heavy swings that forced John to dodge and parry, his rifle unable to block the sheer force behind each strike. But John was quicker, more agile. He used his smaller size to his advantage, slipping past the warlord's defenses and landing several well-placed shots. Still, Sarlacc's armor absorbed much of the damage, and his attacks were relentless. With a roar, the warlord swung his blade in a wide arc, catching John off guard and sending him crashing into a nearby wall. "John," Sarah shouted, but she was too far to intervene. Sarlacc loomed over John, his weapon raised for a final, crushing blow. "This is the end, human." But just as the blade came down, a burst of plasma fire slammed into Srilec's side. Marcus had recovered, and with a roar of his own, he charged the warlord, knocking him off balance. John scrambled to his feet, his heart pounding. He couldn't let this opportunity slip. With everything he had, he aimed his rifle at Srilec's exposed back and fired a concentrated plasma shot directly into the warlord's core. Srilec let out a bellow of pain as the energy ripped through his armor. He stumbled forward, his weapon clattering to the ground. For a moment, the warlord stood frozen, disbelief etched across his face. "You cannot defeat me," Srielec snarled, blood seeping from his wounds. John stepped forward, his gaze hard. "We already have." With one final shot, John ended Srilec's reign. The warlord fell to the ground with a thunderous crash, his once immense power extinguished. Silence filled the throne room as John's team gathered around, their bodies battered but victorious. Zelura looked down at the fallen warlord, her eyes glowing with satisfaction. "It's over." John wiped the sweat from his brow, feeling the weight of the mission finally lift. "Yeah, it's over." The death of Srielec sent shockwaves through Dominion space. The warlord's empire, once held together by fear and brute force, began to crumble. His generals, now leaderless, fractured into warring factions, each vying for control. John and his team returned to Alliance headquarters as heroes, but the aftermath of their mission was far from simple. The vacuum left by Srilec's death created new tensions, and the Dominion, though weakened, was still a formidable enemy. Zelura, though victorious, knew her people would face retaliation. The power structures within the Scifi hierarchy were in turmoil, and she would have to navigate the dangerous political landscape to ensure her species' survival. Back on Earth, the Alliance celebrated the victory, but John couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning. Srilec's death had bought them time, but the war was far from over. There were still countless enemies out there, some even more dangerous than Srielec. John sat in his quarters, staring out at the stars. He knew that as long as humanity stood in the galaxy, there would always be a fight, and they would always rise to meet it. The fight with Srielec had been a turning point, but the galaxy was vast, and new challenges awaited on the horizon. For now, they would rest. But tomorrow, they would be ready. Months had passed since Srilec's defeat, and the galaxy was in a state of uneasy peace. The Alliance was using the time to rebuild and strengthen its forces, but everyone knew the lull wouldn't last. Somewhere out there, new enemies were watching, waiting. John and his team were given a brief respite from the front lines, but they all felt the restlessness creeping in. They were soldiers, fighters, and the calm never sat well with them. Zelura, now a prominent figure among the Scifi rebels, had formed an alliance with the human forces. Her leadership was critical in holding her people together as they transitioned from Srilec's brutal regime to something more hopeful. But peace was a fragile thing, and the galaxy was a dangerous place. One evening, John received a call from Alliance Command. He knew the moment he saw the secure transmission that the respite was over. Commander Blake, the familiar voice of General Briggs, greeted him. The older man's face appeared on the holographic screen, lines etched deeper into his features from the weight of leadership. "We've just intercepted some troubling intelligence." John straightened in his seat. "What kind of intelligence, sir?" "The Dominion's not as fractured as we thought. There's a new player rising within their ranks, someone even more dangerous than Srielec. We don't have a name yet, but we do know this. They've already started consolidating power and uniting the warlord factions." John's heart sank. "And you want us to deal with it?" Briggs gave a grim nod. "It's more than that. We believe this new leader is planning something big, something that could destabilize the entire sector. You and your team are being reactivated. This mission's going to require your particular set of skills." John closed his eyes for a moment, letting the weight of the news settle. "Understood, General. When do we leave?" "Within 48 hours. Get your team ready, Commander. We're sending the details now." As the transmission ended, John leaned back in his chair, feeling the familiar tension building in his muscles. The uneasy peace had been short-lived, just as he'd expected. For the next 2 days, John's team regrouped. Marcus was sharpening his blades when John delivered the news. "Another warlord, huh? Figures they wouldn't stay scattered for long," he said, a grin spreading across his face. "I was getting bored anyway." Sarah, as always, was calm and collected. "We'll need more intel on this new leader. It sounds like they're smarter than Sherlock, more dangerous." Alex had been upgrading their tech in the downtime. "I've got some new gadgets that'll help even the odds, but we're going to need all the help we can get." Zelra, who had remained on Earth as a liaison for the Scifi rebels, joined them for a briefing. She had changed in the months since Sherlock's death, her leadership now tempered by the weight of responsibility. "The Dominion's been in chaos," she said, "but whoever this new leader is, they're different. They're uniting the factions with a vision. Dangerous one. We take them down before they get too strong," John said firmly. "We've done it before. We can do it again." The team prepared in silence, each member focused on the task ahead. They had faced impossible odds before, but something about this mission felt different. The galaxy was shifting, and they were heading into uncharted territory. 2 days later, they were aboard the Resolute, their alliance ship, speeding toward the outer edges of Dominion space. Intelligence had pinpointed a secret gathering of Dominion warlords, all flocking to the call of this mysterious new leader. If John's team could infiltrate the gathering and identify the leader, they might be able to strike a decisive blow. As they neared their destination, John stood on the bridge, staring out at the stars. "What do we know about this leader?" he asked Zelra, who stood beside him. "Not much," she admitted, "but the rumors are troubling. They say this leader is unlike any we've encountered before. They're not just a warrior, they're a strategist. Someone who understands the long game." John's jaw tightened. "Then we'll have to be even smarter." Zelra looked at him, her glowing eyes narrowing. "We're walking into the lion's den again, John. Are you ready for that?" John smiled grimly. "We never left." The mission was simple in theory but perilous in execution. John and his team would disguise themselves as Dominion mercenaries, infiltrate the gathering, and locate the new leader. The difficulty lay in the fact that the Warlords gathering was a tightly guarded event, with only the most trusted allowed entry. Zelra, familiar with Dominion customs and protocols, had arranged their cover identities. They arrived at the secret base on a remote, barren planet, their ship landing amidst a fleet of Dominion vessels. The tension in the air was palpable as they disembarked, surrounded by hundreds of Dominion soldiers and mercenaries. "We're in hostile territory now," Sarah whispered, her sharp eyes scanning the crowd. "One wrong move, and we're dead." John adjusted his disguise, a heavy cloak hiding his face. "Stay sharp. We find the leader, confirm their plans, and get out. No heroics." As they made their way through the base, they passed groups of Dominion soldiers, some of them eyeing the newcomers suspiciously. Zelra led the way, her posture confident and commanding. "Act like you belong," she whispered. "That's the key." They reached the main hall, where the gathering was taking place. The room was filled with Dominion warlords, each surrounded by their personal guards and advisors. The atmosphere crackled with tension as they jockeyed for position, each trying to gain favor with the mysterious new leader. And then, they saw them. At the far end of the hall, standing on a raised platform, was the figure who had united the Dominion factions. Clad in sleek, obsidian armor and flanked by elite guards, the leader radiated authority. Their face was hidden beneath a helmet, but their presence was unmistakable, calculated, deliberate, and utterly commanding. "That's them," Zelra whispered, her voice tight with awe and apprehension. John studied the figure, his instincts prickling. This wasn't like Sherlock. This was something far more dangerous. A leader who commanded loyalty through fear, yes, but also through vision. Whoever they were, they had a plan, and it was already in motion. "We need to get closer," John said. "See if we can figure out what they're planning." As they moved through the crowd, keeping their distance, they overheard snippets of conversation. The warlords were speaking in hushed tones, discussing their leader's grand strategy. "It's brilliant," one warlord muttered. "A coordinated strike across Alliance space. They won't see it coming. They'll fall before they even know what hit them." Another added, "The leader's plan is flawless." John's heart pounded. A coordinated strike. The Alliance was prepared for skirmishes, not a full-scale assault. "We need to warn the Alliance," Sarah whispered urgently. "Not yet," John said, his eyes fixed on the leader. "We need more information. We don't know how far along this plan is." But as they continued to gather intel, the leader's eyes seemed to land on them, as if sensing their presence through the crowd. For a brief, terrifying moment, John thought their cover had been blown. The leader's helmeted gaze lingered on them for a moment longer, then turned away. John exhaled, his body tense. "Let's move. We've got what we need." As they made their way out of the hall, John couldn't shake the feeling that they had just brushed against a storm far more dangerous than anything they'd faced before. The Dominion was on the rise again, and this time, the storm was coming for all of them.